across various walks of life for weeks now. What had started as a simple exercise to help educators understand the technology space better has evolved into a series of webinars with some fantastic discussions and deliberations on myriad topics. Today is a topic that's very close to all of our hearts. We have all read books, loved them, lived through them. They've taken us on a space odyssey. They've taken us 20,000 leagues under the sea. I was there when the Three Musketeers stood up for their friend D'Artagnan. I was there when the Count of Monte Cristo cut out of a shroud under the sea. This vicarious life that we live through books make books so special. A good reading habit is perhaps what every educator advises every student to have. Today, first let me wish all of you an Eid Mubarak and then move on to our proceedings today. Before we start with the deliberations, I will play a short clip of one of the Notebook videos. As most of you are aware, Notebook is an edtech brand. We create small engaging videos to help the cause of education. Students and teachers can use these videos to learn in a very fun way. Teachers particularly find these videos useful since they can start a class with a short clip, engaging the students, whether it's an online class or an offline class, and then proceed to a deeper engagement on the topic. Here is a short clip for you.
So, what are revolutions? And how have they helped make society better and bring about social change? Revolutions are mass riots and protests that lead to the forceful overthrow of a government or social order and replaces it with an alternate system. Why are revolutions necessary in a society? Revolutions are necessary because, over a period of time, a system of governance becomes stagnant and corrupt. Some people gain enormous power and influence and wealth. Poor people suffer badly due to rich people exercising this influence to become wealthier and more powerful. Poverty, lack of basic amenities such as education, health, and sanitation, lack of employment, and social discrimination also play a huge role in making a huge section of the population dissatisfied and helpless. Revolution is the people's way of changing a system that they find is oppressing them and working against them in long term. Does this mean revolutions are very frequent and happen all the time? No, not at all. Every government, whether big or small, is very powerful, and only the biggest, most organized revolutions are ever successful. The other, smaller protests are crushed mercilessly, just like the Indian Revolt of 1857 against the British. However, there are also plenty of examples of successful armed revolutions which have brought down governments and have brought about remarkable social change. We have 2 such examples this year in your syllabus. Yes, in our next videos, we shall study about the French Revolution and the Russian Revolution. We shall get to know what caused them, what happened during these historic events, and what were the long-term consequences of these important movements in history. These revolutions are important as they made great headways towards the universal understanding and granting of human rights and social privileges. They both ruptured the idea of monarchy and destroyed the age-old system of a king or an emperor ruling the whole country with an iron hand and leading lives of luxury at the expense of the poor. They tell us how excessively unequal distribution of wealth and resources in a society finally kill that society and give rise to a new age. Before we take your leave, remember that the spirit of revolution lies within each of us. And it is not necessary that protest always takes the path of violence. We have examples from our own country where peaceful protests and non-cooperation have been able to achieve what armed resistance could not, our country's independence. Peaceful resistance is therefore as important for social change as armed resistance, even perhaps more. So remember, fighting is not the only way to resist. Each of you can bring social change if you become better citizens. if you are aware of others' needs and challenges, and if you learn to work for the greater good and not just your own gain. See you soon for our next videos. Goodbye.
So that, ladies and gentlemen, was a short clip from one of the notebook videos. Our first speaker today, speaking of notebook, is its founder and CEO. Auchin Bhattacharya is a chartered accountant by training. He was a director at Deloitte, and he has worked in India and abroad in various senior capacities in GE, PwC, KPMG, and Deloitte before starting Notebook. Auchin is an avid reader himself and a passionate traveler with a keen interest in economics, history, literature, and philosophy. He is a regular speaker at various forums and chambers of commerce and also contributes articles to numerous publications regularly. He is also on the board of some of the most renowned corporates and contributes significantly to their brand strategies. Auchin, over to you.
Good evening, everyone. Shubha, am I audible?
Yeah, Auchin, loud and clear.
I once again welcome all of you to today's session on a topic which personally is one of my favorites. Human life is too short to personally live through all possible experiences, and books are a wonderful way to see the world through someone else's eyes and learn from their experience. Thus, in spite of the world becoming fast-paced, with each passing day and the engagement quotient that audiovisual content offers, reading habit will always have its own set of subscribers, transcending all socio-economic or demographic barriers. Before deliberating further on this wonderful topic, let me extend a very special welcome to our esteemed panelists who are here to enlighten us further with their views and experience on this very important topic. We indeed look forward to hear from each one of you. Now, one of my all-time favorite movies is Anthony Hopkins' 84 Charing Cross Road. For anyone who really loves books, this is a must-watch. In 1949 New York, Helen has difficulty finding literary classics and British literature titles. She notices an ad in the Saturday Review of Literature placed by booksellers Marks and Company, located at 84 Charing Cross Road in London. She contacts the shop where manager Frank fulfills her request. Now, she is delighted over time and a long-term friendship develops between Helen and Frank and also other staff members. In gratitude of their extraordinary service, which is sending books time to time, Helen begins sending small gifts, holiday packages, food parcels to compensate for post-World War II food shortage in Britain. Now, their correspondence includes discussions about topics as diverse as sermons of John Donne, how to make Yorkshire pudding, Brooklyn Dodgers, and the coronation of Elizabeth II. Helen long intends to visit London and meet her bookseller friend, but for various reasons had to postpone her plans. In December 68, she receives word that Frank is no more and the bookshop has closed. She finally visits the address and the vacant shop in the summer of 71. I still remember first time when I saw this movie, I was really moved. As much as during my first trip to London, I made it a point to visit this address. It really touched me. Some other important movies around this theme, if I may mention, The Hour, a 2002 psychological drama directed by Stephen Daldry, where the plot focuses on three women of different generations whose lives are interconnected by the 1925 novel Mrs. Dalloway by Virginia Woolf. Another biographical drama, Iris, is about novelist Iris Mudra and her relationship with her husband John Bailey. So, Coming to books, I personally was very fortunate to grow up in a house which was a library in itself. Every room had so many stories stacked up in the bookshelves. To me, books were my best friend in my growing up years. And thus now, in any airport around the world, when people shop for duty free liquor or perfume, I land up in the bookstore, going through something or the other. I just love the smell of new books. Sometimes, when you are at a good bookstore or a library, you really feel that there is so much to read and know, and so little time in hand. They can help in enriching you, in entertaining you, or at times to make you feel more inspired or fight back when you are cornered by the big bad world. Also, when you want to travel but circumstances are not favorable, like what we are currently going through, books can help you travel to an entirely new world. Thus, after a while, you become immune to your surroundings, the heat or cold, hunger, sleep, nothing bothers you. If you have found a good book which strikes a chord with you. And then, once you finish a real engaging book and you realize that you no longer have pages to turn around, you suddenly feel lonely. It's just like losing a very dear friend with whom we had a very engaging relationship. I'm sure all of us have spent sleepless nights just because we couldn't leave a book midway. Next day in the morning, there's a hangover from late night reading. It's an intoxication of a different kind that I guess is a joy that every book lover understands. I always tell my younger friends, life itself is so intoxicating with so much to offer that once you step into a good bookstore, you lose track of time and your to do list. Visiting a library has its own charm as each book has changed so many hands. Sometimes it's wonderful to read an old book which does not belong to you. In fact, just like sunlight, air, and water, knowledge also, I believe, is indispensable for human existence. And like the other three, not necessarily always expensive. What it really needs is passion to learn. If you are really keen to learn, no one can stop you from doing that. Second-hand bookstores or street vendors are another marvel. In fact, whenever I visit Connaught Place during daytime to attend a business lunch, I invariably get late as some old book on the footpath catches my attention. And then while glancing through the pages, often underlined by the previous reader, my cell phone suddenly rings and someone from my team informs that everyone else except me is in for the meeting. In fact, Kolkata has one of the oldest and biggest second-hand book market, College Street, where you can find, you know, almost anything that you're looking for. And although other commitments do not allow me to go there too often, given a chance, it's a treat to spend a lazy winter afternoon there, glancing through the books, some of which have changed several hands. We may agree or disagree with the views of any author, as all of us have our own viewpoint and perception. But it's wonderful to know the thought process of someone else. At times, it really clears a lot of doubt. Thus, judgment is often relative, as unless we know the story, any random quote may be out of context. At times, some books leave an indelible impression on our mind. In fact, they can change your thought process and help you unlearn and relearn the basic philosophy of life. Although there are thousands of such literary masterpieces, some which I would like to mention, for instance, Siddhartha is a novel by Hermann Hesse that deals with the spiritual journey of self discovery of a man named Siddhartha during the time of Gautam Buddha. The book author's ninth novel was written in German in a simple lyrical style. It was published in US in 51 and became influential during the 60s. The word Siddhartha is made up of two words in Sanskrit. Siddha means achieved and Artha, what was searched for, which together means he who has found meaning of existence or he who has attained his goal. In fact, Buddha's own name before his renunciation was Siddhartha Gautama, prince of Kapilavastu. In this book, the Buddha is referred to as Gautama. Another very famous work of literature that comes to my mind are the epic poems Iliad and the Odyssey by Greek author Homer. These two epic poems that are the central work of ancient Greek literature. The Iliad is set during the Trojan War, the 10-year siege of the city of Troy by a coalition of Greek kingdoms. The Odyssey focuses on the 10-year journey home of Odysseus, king of Ithaca, after the fall of Troy. Another masterpiece which I would like to mention in English literature is Wuthering Heights, a novel by Emily Bronte, published in 1847 under her pseudonym Alice Bell. Although this is now a classic of English literature, contemporaneous reviews were deeply polarized. It was controversial because of its unusually stark depiction of mental and physical cruelty. And it challenged Victorian ideas about religion, morality, class, and a woman's place in society. Many online giants started their journey selling books. In fact, Amazon was founded in the garage of Bezos' rented home in Washington. Bezos' parents invested almost $250,000 in the startup. In July 95, the company began service as an online bookstore. In first 2 months of business, Amazon sold to all 50 states and more than 45 countries. In fact, closer home, Flipkart also initially focused on book sales before expanding into other product categories such as consumer electronics, fashion, home essentials, groceries, and lifestyle products. Thus, it is important to encourage reading habit in children. In fact, even in the case of toddlers, reading books to them helps. It really creates a bond as they start developing a nice, pleasant feeling for books. In fact, it is very important that parents and teachers take active interest in developing a customized reading schedule for students, as it really makes a lot of difference in terms of developing interest for books. Suggesting the right book at the right age is very important for proper mental development and exposure of the child. And only someone who has been through the journey can do that. One thing common with almost all successful world leaders, visionary entrepreneurs, or spiritual gurus is that they're all voracious readers. Unless children continuously invest in themselves and know more about people, places, cultures, how will they initiate and engage in interesting conversations which will help them to get people's attention in this fast-paced world? Podium finish in life is dependent on a lot of factors, and continuous effort in improving intrinsic value is one of the most important ones. Thus, it is really important that our children discover the joy of reading. Once they discover the same, the rest is bound to happen. In fact, one of the joys of reading is that it really helps in developing imagination. And I think that's the first step to creativity. Books are one of our best companions. Thus, a long, boring journey seems too short if we have a good book in our hand. Revisiting an old book which we read years ago is just like visiting an old friend, bringing back familiar feeling and a lot of nostalgia. Print across the world is going out of business after being challenged by the convenience that digital offers. Personally, I'm very fond of the smell of new books. It gives me immense pleasure. However, there is no denying the fact that digital has its own advantages. I guess what matters is the reading habit. And as long as that is inculcated among our schoolgoers, I guess we should be happy. Last few months of pandemic have confined all of us to our homes, while we the adults have started the gradual unlocking process with sporadic or rotational visits to our workplace. Children are still away from their school and friends, from their playgrounds. Perhaps this is the time to help them, guide them with your handpicked selection of books so that they fall in love with reading. I sincerely thank all of you for giving me a patient hearing. I look forward to hear from our esteemed panel more on this. Thank you. Over to you, Shubhayu.
Thank you, Achin. Thank you for that wonderful, wonderful piece about reading. We who know Achin personally know that Achin is a pain to pull away from a bookstore. We have come close to missing our flights on multiple occasions thanks to him being stuck on which book to buy. The solution is quite simple. He eventually ends up buying both. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we will now move on to our first guest speaker for today. We are privileged to have Ms. Sandhya Rao with us. Ms. Sandhya Rao is an author and a columnist. She spent many years of experience in mainstream media and publishing and assisted the renowned dancer Chandralekha to put together Stree, an exhibition on women, as part of the Festival of India in Moscow. She has participated in book fairs and seminars around the globe and was invited as one of the two children's authors to the Frankfurt Book Fair in 2006. She has written many books for children and often conducts workshops for them. She writes a column on books for Rotary News and teaches business communication at the Crescent School of Business, Chennai, where she resides and is a freelancer now. She loves to read and enthuse others to read. Ma'am, it's an honor having you with us today. Over to you. Ma'am, I think you're on mute.
Thank you for that.
No problem, ma'am. Thank you.
I have to say that a lot of the things that Achin said kind of resonated with me. I think it would resonate with anybody who loves books and who loves to read and who would, grab anytime, anywhere, any place just to read something and maybe read it again and again. I'd like to, first of all, thank you for inviting me to participate in this exciting program. When I start talking about books, I can't stop. So it's the best place to be. I'd like to start off with a little anecdote that was told to me by a friend who worked at the National Book Trust's National Center for Children's Literature. For a long time, for many years, the NBT would take their books in a bus to remote corners of the country, small villages and towns. I'm not sure if they still do it, but they were doing it for very many years. And she shared with me this one incident of, where she saw in one little village, I think it was somewhere in Madhya Pradesh, she saw there would be people waiting in line. NBT books cost just about, at that time, 5 rupees and 10 rupees. And there was this little boy waiting anxiously with 5 rupees in his hand. The moment the NBT bus came, he was eager to receive his book. He handed over the money and he got a book. He grabbed it. He ran to a tree, climbed on top of the tree, sat down there and started reading. And someone noticed that he was actually holding the book upside down. But he was so engrossed turning the pages. Obviously, it was well illustrated. And he was completely lost to the world. I know I've been so touched by this story, because I think it signifies his deep desire, and the kind of adventure that awaits a young person who wants to read, who wants to know more about the world. And then every time I think of about books, or I want to write something, I do think of this little boy, and I think, okay, I have to write it for this boy. I have to reach it to this boy. I have to reach it in a language that he will understand, that he will be able to read. So like I said, ever since I remember I've been a reader, my father used to read a lot. He loved humor and he loved comics. So I would read a lot of comics. My mother, like a lot of women in India, was always very, very busy taking care of things. But as she grew older and she had more time on her hands, she started to read. She was like this dog with a curly tail. She would read. She would ask me for a book. I would give it to her. She would read. She read in Tamil and in English. And I would give her a book. She would quickly finish it. And she'd say, okay, I finished this book. Give me another one. And then, I would give her another one. And the last book that she read, barely about a week before she passed away last year, was Michelle Obama's Becoming, a fat book, a hardcover book with small print in it. But, she was so engrossed in it. And she, I think this kind of brings to mind and brings us this realization that books take you to so many different places, as was mentioned. You can sit in one place and on the wings of your imagination, go to various places. But there's one question that I constantly get asked as an editor and as a writer. And to this day, a lot of people ask me, my child, tell me or ask me, my child doesn't read. What do I do? How do I make my child read? Because in the last 10 years or so in children's, there's been this kind of movement in children's publishing where a lot of NGOs and small independent publishers as well have sort of been trying very hard to get books for younger readers and reach them to those young readers in their own languages, in translation in several Indian languages. So, there's a kind of a pressure on young parents today. So when the child doesn't read, they don't know what to do. So I ask them in return, do you read? Do your children see you read? And very often I have to say, the answer is no. You get back home after a hard day's work, you sort of put your feet up, you switch on the TV, or you go into the kitchen, or whatever it is that you do. You just want to forget everything, and maybe you've been sitting in front of the computer for a long part of the day, so you don't want to look at another word, even if it is a work of fiction. So the first thing is, I would say, to a person who asks me what they should do when their child doesn't read, is your child should see you read, because children learn very often by imitation. The other thing that happens is, I buy a lot of books, I bought this really expensive book and he doesn't even look at it. Now, a small child, and it's a fat book, so many pages, so many, rupees, this, that, and the other. But the thing is, a small child has small hands and, and needs to be able to hold the book in his or her hand. So you have to be aware of that and give children books that they can handle, that they find interesting. There's another group of people who will buy these expensive books and put them away, far away, high up on the topmost shelf, so that the child cannot reach the book. I always say, you can introduce books to children when they are very young, as again has been already mentioned. You can share books with small children. When they are very little, a book is a toy like any other toy, and they will play with it, and let the child play with it. And slowly you sort of show, as you keep turning the pages, slowly the child begins to imitate you, and then slowly gets interested in what's happening in the book. Oh, those pictures, or those colors, or those squiggly things which are actually words. Then you sit with the child, you read aloud, even if it's a baby. It doesn't matter if the child doesn't understand what you're saying. It's just, just the sound, the cadence of your voice kind of is such a is such a mesmerizing thing. Every parent, every adult can do it with a child. You don't have to be an Amitabh Bachchan with his kind of, you know, uh, delivery and all that. If it comes with feeling and with affection, the child gets everything that the child needs. You know, the same thing. Uh, I once attended a workshop with librarians. There were about 25 or 30 librarians. And there again, the question was asked, so what do you read? You know, the children don't read, they mess up the library, they throw books around, they don't put the books back where they have to be put and things like that. Two things here. One, when we asked the librarians if what their reading habits were like, what kind of books they liked to read, you would be shocked to know that only about, say, 5 or 6 of them actually said they read books. The others said, some of them said, yeah, we occasionally read magazines. Many of them said they didn't read. And one of the reasons they gave was that they didn't have the time. But you're a librarian, that's your job. You have to know every single book that's there in your library. The second thing is at another workshop about talking about books for children, one person said, you know, these children don't treat the books well. They don't know how to keep them well. You know, we have to do something about it. And someone else stood up and said, you know what? A good library is one where the books are worn and torn, because that means children are reading. And that's what we want to do. And that therefore the best libraries will always have more than one copy of the book. Having said that, the sad truth is, even today, many schools, many private schools do not have libraries, do not believe in libraries. Because one, maintaining the books they feel is too much trouble. Two, the books are too expensive. Give us cheap and best. That's what we want to. And the managements simply do not give importance to the need to trigger ideas in children's minds. Where do ideas come from? Yes, they come from experience, they come from the world around you, what you see around you. But how much can a small child see? Books and know and experience. Books help them get some of these experiences. And that's why they're so absolutely essential. You know, like some of us, we kind of grew up, well, in a sense, you could say that some people are kind of born readers. It's just like some people who can sing from the very beginning in tune. Some people read from the very beginning. They love books, but not all children are like that. So the children we find, the people not just children actually. When I talk about children, I don't mean only children. I have thrust books upon. I keep thrusting books on people, and I have thrust books on so many of my friends saying, you know, this is a great book. You must read it. You must read it. And then after that, they will avoid me. They won't call me. And when we do meet, they'll say, you know what, I'm sorry, I still haven't started reading that book. I don't know why. You know, I will read. And other friends, you know, when I visited him, he said, I'm so sorry, I haven't read the book you gave me, you know, that Amitabh Ghosh, Glass Palace. But you know what, I've covered it with newspaper, so it's very safe. It's safe with me. You want to take it back? I said, no, I don't want to take it back. I want you to finish reading it. So we have to create a climate, and we have to start early. We have to start with small children. We have to make books available. We have to make books easily accessible to children. We can't put them away somewhere. I remember when my son was young, you know, he used to look forward to the library period. But then after a while, he got bored. He said, because, you know, they open just one shelf for us and all of them are such baby books, he'd say. You know, I want to read, you know, books that are on other shelves, but my teacher won't allow me. We have to, because different children have different levels, are at different levels of reading and have different interests too. So while we can choose, yes, with our experience, we can choose some books, but we also have to allow children the freedom to pick whatever they want. Typically in a book fair, you know, you would take children to buy books for them, and then invariably parents will intervene and say, no, not this book, that one. I say, okay, so you buy the books that you want your child to read, but also buy a few books that your child is choosing. Never mind if you think they are not appropriate. It's okay, but allow that child that freedom, you know. Then, you know, positive kind of, the child gets a kind of positive feedback, and not this constant no, 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 not this book, not this one, not that one, but that one. And that child will refuse to look at that book that you have chosen for a very long time. We have to also give them books, attractively printed. By that, I don't mean expensive, but today, our production quality is so good. It's just a question of choosing the right kind of paper and ensuring that there's no show through on either side. Again, I'll give you an example. When Pratham launched its program, Room to Read program at the Jamia Millia University in Delhi in 2008, they had, got books printed for the program, and they invited children from municipal schools. Now, a whole set of other books were supposed to come from some publishers, independent publishers, well printed, colorful, interesting stories. But I remember that September, it was raining a lot, and so the delivery was slightly delayed. But I had a set of some of those books. The children had already been given some books in black and white. Not that children will not read black and white, but it's just that the paper was so thin, there was a lot of show through, and they found it difficult to read. So I just found some children sitting around looking bored. So I walked into this classroom, pulled out the books that I had with me, and started sharing them and reading them aloud, showing them the pictures. And they got so excited. By the time I left, they said, Didi, hame aise wale kitab chahiye, rangeen wale kitab chahiye, wo wale nahi chahiye. Attractive, make them attractive. I mean, we all like attractive things, don't we? We'd rather see a good movie than a bad one. We'd rather eat a tasty dish than a so-so kind of dish. It's the same for books. It's the same for reading. It's the same for children. The third thing is, a mistake we make is that I think even in schools, in our eagerness to get children to read, we set reading like a task. What do? We say you read this book and then you write a review. Oh my God, that's enough to kill any spirit of reading that may be lurking somewhere in the child's subconscious. You know, then it becomes a chore, a punishment, some kind of classwork, homework, horrible kind of thing. Wherever I go, whenever I talk to teachers, whichever school I go to, I tell them, please don't ask them to write reviews. Just let them read. It's okay. Maybe you can just have a kind of a chat session about it. But don't set a task based on books. Give them the choice. You know, we have to, as teachers, as adults, as parents, we have to enable children to become readers. You know, we can't kind of don't prevent them from looking at or doing or reading certain books. Don't try, at least not to prescribe, but enable. You enable by making books accessible. Make them, now during this time, we're all kind of stuck at home, and parents with younger children are tearing their hair because they don't know how to keep them entertained. One of the things you can do is get hold of whatever books you have and keep them around. Never mind if the house is a little messy, but leave them around so that at least out of sheer boredom, they'll pull out a book and read. I'm not saying this will make everybody a reader. It won't. But you'd make some of them into readers, and that's a start. Before, I know I've gone on for a long time, but there's just one other thing that I'd like to touch upon, and that is listening. I'm so glad that this was mentioned in one of those comments, because as Indians and as Indian children, we are very poor listeners. We have We have lots of opinions. We love to express ourselves loud and clear. Just watch any show on television. However, we are very poor listeners. And here again, I can give you examples. I've worked, I have read, I've been to schools in Germany, in Sweden, in the UK, and I have, in Sweden, for instance, small children, 7 and 8 year olds who don't know English then. So I would read and then the teacher would translate into Swedish. They would all listen. There was nobody getting distracted, or I don't know what it is in the training, but you do the same thing with a bunch of kids here. Most often there will be so much distraction, and then you have to become this horrible monster holding a stick in her hand to control the kids. So yes, we have to, in school, we have to find a way. I know we have large classrooms and we do have our own problems. 40, 50, 60 kids in a class is very, very difficult to manage. Maybe that we need to have 2 teachers in the class. But we do need to help our children listen, learn to listen. And one of the ways, again, which has already been pointed out, is to read aloud. And reading aloud is necessarily not only for children. Families can do it. You know, you can pick any book. You can pick, well, Homer's Iliad, for instance, and read a few lines from it together. You know, it can be anything. It can be a wonderful family activity. It can be a wonderful activity among friends. It can be a wonderful activity in class. You can do it, and slowly you develop this habit of listening. And then you also learn to listen to the music in the words, you know, and then you'll be able to distinguish between good writing, not so good writing, words, the sound of words, different languages, the sound of different languages. You know, these are ways in which we can help our children learn to read and learn to listen. So I just end my my few sharing of a few experiences with you know, this little observation made by a 9-year-old. She told me once that, you know, her mother used to shout at her for reading the same book over and over again, and then finally one time her mother, in absolute exasperation, said, "Why are you reading this book again?" So she 9 years old, she said, "Amma, every time I read this book, I discover something new in it." And I thought, wow, what an insight. That's the thing about books. That's the thing about reading. And that's why we need to help people read, because we need those minds to become sharp, because only then can we create good citizens and good leadership, which unfortunately today the whole world is suffering, you know, because we have such lousy leadership all around the world. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. It's been an absolute privilege listening to you. If ever there was any doubt that the love of reading is infectious, I think you've dispelled all those doubts today. Thank you so much for that. Ladies and gentlemen, it is now time to introduce our next guest speaker today. Our next speaker is Mr. Sanjay Dewangan. Mr. Dewangan is the principal of the Wisdom Global School in Haridwar. He is by qualification an MSc, a B.Ed and an MBA, with a total of 25 years of teaching experience in schools, of which 10 years have been as a principal. Prior to Wisdom Global, he worked in St. Xavier School, O.P. Jindal School, Delhi Public School, where he taught maths and science. Mr. Dewangan is not new to the Together for Education webinars. We've had him once before, and we thank you again, sir, for gracing this platform. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Subhayu. Good evening to all the listeners, all the panelists over here. Here, I would like to share some PPTs, and by which I would like to, put my words over here. I listened, Achin. It was really fantastic. I listened, ma'am, also. So it was very nice. But being a principal and my experiences regarding this, here a question arises that why we are forcing the students, sometimes it is there also from the student side, why should I read? So somehow we have to convince the people or convince the students. In fact, I received many, such comments from the parent side. 60%, 70% parents, they say that their children do not enjoy reading. That's a lot of kids. Even kids don't like reading. They are less likely to put time in to this reading.
Sorry to interrupt, sir. Really sorry. But are you sharing a PowerPoint? Because we cannot see anything on our screens.
Yeah. Someone can help me to get this, because I got some
Sure.
steps how to share this one, because share a screen. Then
Sir, at the bottom of your screen, there's a green button called Share Screen. When you
I
click
got.
on that, it will show up multiple screens.
Okay.
Perfect, sir. We can see your PPT now. Thank you so much.
Okay. So this is a question. Why should I read? This question is from a student side. Why should I read? As it is said that reading is the mind, what exercise for the body. So nourishment for the brain. It is suggested that you have to read because you need some energy, some nourishment, some nutrients for your brain, and that less your stress, that give you relaxation. When child says that, yeah, I have a number of ways, like I can see movie, I can listen music, I can use YouTube and many other things for which I can reduce my stress. But somehow it is, you know uh, somehow it is our duty to convince them that this reading is very, very important in terms of whatever you have to become in your life. It doesn't mean that an IAS officer or whatever the doctor or any profession you have to choose, or you have to develop your communication skill. Someone can say that, yeah, I would not be in such profession where communication is required. I would not be in a such profession where drafting is required. I would be in such profession where this thing would. But somehow we have to make the child, this reading is very, very important. Reason is what? Because that gives you confidence, that gives you strength. So here this question, how can we help children to become better readers? This question is for us, for all the book lover clubs people. Yeah, how we can enhance the more number of book readers. So it is a kind of a challenge for all the schools, principals, teachers, because coming generation is digitalized one, and they get everything solved, that too in a very YouTube form, where pictures are there, videos are there, so they can get summary of the books through YouTube. So that is why it's very difficult to make them a strong reader. So suggested points, as already discussed by Sandhya ma'am, we have to select the books what they like. Maybe story books, maybe some kind of a detective, mystery, novel, classic books, horror book, and biography. So here, what is our role? So as madam told that whenever we go for the book fair, and whenever the child choose a book, and then parents says that this is not, this one is not, that you have to select because maths is there, science is there, English grammar is there, this is more important for you. But child wants to select some other reading books, but parents suggest, parent interfere invariably that not to choose. Reason is that because you never ever, as a parent or as a teacher, if I discuss like a parent, so when my son and my daughter, my daughter is elder, so whenever she used to find any time, she used to come to me and asking, you just please tell me a story, you please tell me a story. Evening time, or whenever I go to bed, at the time she used to come and ask me about these stories. And today she likes reading a lot and having a lot of collections of all the books, many other books, even the foreign writers, foreign authors. Basically, we belongs to Indian families are mostly we love Hindi writers or authors, like earlier we used to read Panchtantra's, Aesop's, Bikram Vetal, even Arabian Nights, that all those books we read, many stories book, Tolstoy, Ruskin Bond, many other ones I read. So it is very, very important that you have to you have to generate interest in the child. You have to motivate them for reading. And how it is possible? Because there was a one movie called Rustam. When my son saw that movie and he said, Daddy, you told about the Rustam, but the movie was not like that. Because that story of Rustam was something different and movie picturization was something different. So I said, Beta, you go through this, story, you'll find it is a different, it is a, related to the warrior of Persia. So he was very much interested after seeing the movie, and he found anyhow from the internet, and he has gone through the entire story of Rustam. Similarly, that the book selection, uh, what book we have to suggest for the students or for the child age wise, uh, at least 70 to 80% things should be familiar for him, whether it is related to in a picture form, whether it is related in a words form, whether it is related to any kind of small stories, or it should be familiar to. If it is 100% unknown for that, he will not generate his own interest to go through this or even to turn the page. Because it is very important to motivate the child to turn the page. At least something should be familiar for him. Then only he will try to turn the page. Otherwise, he will not turn the page at all. So this is very, very important that this book, the pages or the pictures or a text should be familiar, and the text should not be very difficult. It should be very easy, which he knows the meaning of all those things, at least 60 to 70%. So here, question is that how to develop reading skills in growing readers. So there are number of things which we have to suggest for them about the uh, reading how you have to read. There is again conflict that reading should be loud, but someone suggested that reading in the classroom should not be loud. Reason is that there may be a certain mistakes, so the child may feel hurted because he is in a peer group and he may feel some pressure on it. So the silent reading is there. But at the same time, when child is alone at home and you are sitting there as a parent, so you must allow the child to read loud so that the pronunciation part or some other kind of a thing that you can make him understand. So this is very important that child has to read aloud, and he must understand that he is understanding the meaning. Only reading but not understanding will not help the child to develop the interest. Provide the books at right stage. The meaning of this, the provide the book at right stage. The same thing what I was saying, that stage where the child at least feel happy to turn the page. Child must feel happy to see the text. Child must feel happy to see the pictures. Child must feel happy to share with other one also of this same peer group. Yeah, see that these things are given in this book. Just see this, so the other will be also motivated. Where they will be familiar with the many pictures. They are very much familiar with the text, so that other he can influence the his peers for reading, and then possible that they can be influenced in a peer learning. So provide the book at that stage where the child at least know what is in the book and what kind of a pictures and things or texts are given. Now building fluency is again a kind of a thing that the child will be asked to read and read and read so that he can develop his fluency. And here it is very important to support system to gain confidence. Support system to gain confidence means that the child, if is interested to read something, to understand something, but no one is there to support the child, no one is there to tell the child, no one is there to guide the child to what is there, because he wants to read, he wants to see what is there inside this, but no one is there. So support system is required. As far as this school is concerned, as Sandhya madam was talking about this, so CBSE school, almost CBSE schools are having library because it is mandatory as per the CBSE. and that to the number of a student multiplied by 5, these many books should be there. That too of not the text of subject books, that should be other than subject books should be there. So most of the CBSE schools are having a big huge library and having a good number of books. So here the role of teacher is very, very significant, very, very important. Role of the teacher in sense that the teacher should have its own passion of reading book. Teachers should know a different books, but everyone is running behind the marks. Everyone is, so they have a shortcut way that you have to be very confined for this kind of a thing so that you can achieve 100% marks or 99% marks. So marks oriented thing has become more popular than the reading. So the reading content, knowing depth knowledge has become very shallow now in these days. So therefore the teacher has to motivate the children for reading, and even teacher has to tell, see, it is said that if you have to make any subject understand to the child, so story is the best possible way by which you can make this class enthusiast for learning and to interest for the understanding also, so that understanding level can be enhanced by your way of approach. So the best approach is what? Story form. So this is only possible when you yourself read the book, so many books, and then you tell about that in this book, these things are there, this kind of stories are there, this happens in this happens in this. Like Macbeth, Julius Caesar, or many other books are there. If you tell in a very dramatic way, so that child will be interested to read, and then child will see that my teacher told me this, so I have to go and I have to see in this. Even Vikram Bital, we used to read in our earlier days when we were the students. But the same Vikram Bital, when we used to tell to the student, and they found that the same Vikram Bital is serial wise, it is broadcasted. So they are very happy. But reading part is giving something sense to them. They want to read it. And such certain stories where the questions are asked, Chanda Mama, Nandan, Champak, many more comics books were there. Motu Patlu, Chacha Chaudhary, and Rajan Iqbal. So there were number of books which we used to. Because Achin, you told about all those foreign authors book. It would be little difficult because new education policy says that up to class 5 you have to teach in the regional language and should not teach in English. So as far as the reading and we have to enhance the quality. So somehow they should know about their own locality, about their own nearby areas. So such books to be selected so that they will feel happy. Yeah, something is there nearby us, and with that we don't know. So they will be curious to know. They will be curious to learn. They will be curious to read it. And at the same time, the support system to gain confidence, the teacher or the parent or anyone elder or adult people, those who can help and support, and need to identify the area where they are having the problem. So this the area where they find the problems, so that is to be solved. Support system should be there. Either they are unable to pronounce it, they are unable to read it, a big word is there which they don't know the meaning, the sentence meaning is there. So if someone is helping and identifying what all the problems are with the child who is unable to read it properly, and lacking his confidence because he is unable to read. Obviously if one is unable to read it, will is interest on that. So that role of teacher is very, very significant in this regard, to enhance his interest and develop reading skills also. And then there are things which you have to relate all those area of interest, like cricket is there, football is there, some other sports is there, even movies related things, or any art, drama, literary club, dramatics. So if you motivate the students to read about, doesn't mean that all the time you have to be very much after to the child to read about the English or your textbook or physics, chemistry, mathematics. That will not help the readers to grow the interest or to develop the interest for the reading. If you ask the child to read about some movies review or something, you have to ask about any match review, so that child will feel happy and will read a lot. And then you have to correlate the things with what happened exactly. So the area which he likes or feel very common interest of all, that they are just shifting from subject topic to another topic, so then they'll feel happy. It happens in classroom. If the teacher talks about something else other than the subject, then everyone start participating in that. Yes ma'am, yes ma'am, yes ma'am, I know, yes ma'am, yes, everyone started. Same way, if you ask the question related to the physics or related to chemistry, then everyone becomes ma'am. So why? Because area which you are touching is really a very common for everyone, and they feel happy to be in that area, so they like that area. So if you want to really improve reading skills in among the children, so you need to start those area which are very familiar for them, which they like it, which they want to know more about this. So definitely they will be improving their reading skills. They'll be thinking or many more other things that would help the children to grow their interest in reading. Same way, there are certain see, Sandhya ma'am told that not to force, but sorry to share with me, with you all, here we have certain MCQ kind of a pattern which is called apps or applications, because we want to enhance reading. Sometimes we force our student that you have to read each and every line. So how we have, because sometimes it is required to have little force to get the work done, to enhance their reading skill. So we keep certain examination class test or periodic test or monthly test in that MCQ form, and it is given from the book's inside question, so that child has to read the book thoroughly, and then thoroughly he has to read, then only he can answer the questions. So MCQ pattern we adopt it. So that is, and sometimes that English teachers, they also do one thing, that they give, like Mahabharat is there, maybe Rani Lakshmi Bai is there, and then we have a number of copies, or sometimes a particular chapter is uh, photocopied, and then it is distributed to the student and asked, you have to read it thoroughly, and then I'll ask the questions, and this will be given a 5 marks to each. So then every child, they reads very sincerely, very thoroughly, and then the teacher gets everyone participate wholeheartedly. And if you see the result, it is a 90 plus percentages there, then they are gaining. So whenever we are forcing, see, this is another topic. It is not related to their English or text or grammar or something like that. It is related to any story related things, related to Mahabharata, related to Lakshmi Bai, related to anything. Okay, just to develop the reading skills, and just we have to ensure that whether they are really reading this sincerely or not. So we force the students sometimes to participate in the examinations form, and you will be having award marks for this also, 5 marks, 2 marks, 3 marks. So they sincerely read it twice and thrice. They, but they memorize sometimes also, but we avoid this, not to memorize those things. Just you read it twice and thrice, then you will have to understand what is the meaning of this particular word, what is the meaning of this particular phrase, what is the meaning of this particular idioms. So this way we try, uh, the students, we try our best to improve reading skills. And listening skill is also very important, as madam was saying that listening skill in Indian students is really lacking a lot. But the way you tell the story, the way you mesmerize them in a classroom, like you are seeing, and you are just face expression, your uh, sound, your voice modulation, then they listen very carefully, what next to be, because ma'am is telling the story in such a way that what feel is there in the story, what kind of suspense is there in that story. So the way you tell, then you tell, you read it, you go through this all you would find a very interesting on that, because I cannot tell each and everything here. There are many things related to this in the text. You read it and you'll find it many things, and you just share with me. I'll give you a 1 day time, 2 days time, or the weekdays time, and these books are available in library. So you please go and read it. So then it somehow teaches role to motivate them, teaches role to listen, to develop, listening skill in them. And I'm really against that. They have to summarize those whatever they read, they read in a piece of paper. So because sometimes as a principal, our duty to develop the writing skill also. So we asked our English teachers, we have to see whether they can summarize the thing, they can write the gist of the story what they have written. So this they have read all those things. So this is what the way we think that we can develop. And very younger level students of class even kg onwards, where the 5 years old students, they are we have specifically for them a library corner where no one goes, only for them only, that too in their class only. So we have a library. They themselves select. We have a 5 sections of KG having a 5 different, and their class libraries are there. So they themselves pick up the books. They themselves select pictures, the stories, and many other. And teachers help them because mother teacher concept is there. The two teachers are there, and they remain there permanently over there, and they help them for reading. They help them to understand all those things. So we try our best to develop a reading skill in our students, that too in a very young age of 4 to 5 years of age. Similarly, we have a separate library for class 1 in their class 2 in their class, class 3 in their class. Same way, up to 2 the library is there. Up to 2 the library is there. The story books and teacher distribute to them. A number of books are there in their library in the class itself. So this helps all the students, to read and to grow their knowledge, and teachers also helping in this regard to interest. And teachers are working hard to enhance, but somehow it is our duty to check whether they are really sincerely um, discharging their duty to improve reading skills in the students or not. So we check it thoroughly. We go and we ask about any stories this you have done or not you have done, because it is a plan. It is a monthly plan. It is a weekly plan. It also reflect in their planner, weekly planner. The story time is there, reading time is there, music time is there, and storytelling. So many times are there. So they have their slot of time in their planner, and according to that they do it on regular basis. And in fact, now in these days, every school is having Facebook, Instagram, and they post it also. This story was storytelling competition was there. This happened. So many things are there, so that the student parents then see photographs of their own child on Facebook. So they also motivate the children to read a story or to learn the story, and then tell the story. So this is somehow that entire system, because it is a partnership between parents and teachers that all together will work to enhance the skills of reading skills or learning skills or listening skills or writing skills. So if I force, or if I say that only teacher is responsible, so I think I would be wrong here. So it is a responsibility of the parents too, and parent has to be, because now in these days I found that many parents, those who are purchasing a books and keeping aside, they are even hardly reading 1 or 2 pages and very much engaged in mobile, because the mobile has become the part of the life. Like, if mobile is or internet is not there or something like this, they think that something has gone from their life, and they feel very uneasy. But same thing, the child see at home that mother and father all are busy in the mobile, then he also find himself something to remain busy in either computer game, a video game, or somewhere. So if somebody is forcing him, you have to read this one, you have to do that, he won't read, because someone should be there to support the child, and which is lacking a lot in present generation, in young generation. So this is a role of the teacher as well as of the parents, the entire stakeholder, those who are responsible for this students or this generation. So they the together will make difference here. And I think Subhayu, this was my experience what I wanted to share with you all. And I would say thank to all of you listening me patiently. Here there is a one very good Sabdar Azmi, he writes that kitabe kehti hai, kitabe baatein karti hai, that kind of a poem is there. And if you find it something, so it is very nice. Kitabe करती है बातें बीते जमाने की, दुनिया की, इंसानों की, आज की, कल की, एक एक पल की, खुशियों की, गमों की, फूलों की, बमों की, जीतों की, हार की, प्यार की, मार की। क्या तुम नहीं सुनोगे इन किताबों की बातें? किताबें कुछ कहना चाहती है, तुम्हारे पास रहना चाहती है। किताबों में चिड़िया की चहचहाती है, किताबों में खेतियां लहलहाती हैं, किताबों में झरने गुनगुनाते हैं, परियों के किस्से सुनाते हैं, किताबों में रॉकेट का राज है, किताबों में साइंस की आवाज है, किताबों में कितना बड़ा संसार है, किताबों में ज्ञान का भरमार है। क्या तुम इस संसार में नहीं जीना चाहते? किताबें कुछ कहना चाहती है, तुम्हारे पास रहना चाहती है। थैंक यू वेरी मच। थैंक यू टू ऑल ऑफ यू। हैप्पी रक्षाबंधन टू ऑल, and over to Subhayu. Thank you, Subhayu.
Wonderful, sir, wonderful. Thank you so much. Loved listening to that. And sir, congratulations on the win yesterday. Ladies and gentlemen, those who do not know, we also host an online debate for schools. We are hosting 64 schools from across India, Nepal, Middle East, and Africa. Yesterday, the Wisdom Global School Haridwar had a match, which they won convincingly. Very, very well done, sir.
Thank you, Subhayu. Thank you very much.
With that, ladies and gentlemen, we will now introduce our next guest speaker. Our next guest speaker is Miss. My apologies, 1 second. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry about that. You'll have to give me 1 second. I'm facing a bit of a connectivity issue at my end. Please bear with me as we just get the connectivity back. Sorry about that. And we are back. So our next guest speaker is Mrs. Madhu Sharma. Mrs. Sharma, with an MA, MEd, and an MPhil, has a vast experience of 34 years in the field of education. She has worked as principal for 27 years with prestigious managements like DAV and APJ. Presently, she has taken over the charge of CT World School, Jalandhar. She is a very enthusiastic and vivacious person who is keen to learn and implement new ideas in the teaching-learning process. She is a versatile lady who has carved a niche for herself as a principal and as a teacher. The schools wherever she has worked has touched the pinnacle of glory under her stewardship and enriched wisdom. Mrs. Sharma has international exposure to the education systems of England and the US, where she visited under exchange programs under the aegis of British Council. She is a member of the Sexual Harassment Committee of Department of Central Excise and Customs, Ludhiana and Jalandhar circles. Mrs. Madhu Sharma has the honor of being nominated by the government of Punjab to be a civil judge in the Lok Adalats for more than 2 years, where she played active roles in resolving a variety of cases filed with the Lok Adalats. She has also rendered her services as chairperson, Jalandhar Sahodaya, comprising of more than 100 CBSE schools in and around Jalandhar, and actively initiated new projects during her tenure. She is a member of the governing board of many CBSE schools, where her valuable suggestions are always welcomed and implemented. She is also the proud mother of 2 daughters and an ardent supporter of women's empowerment and gender equality. Ma'am, it's a privilege to have you with us today. Over to you.
Thank you, sir. First of all, I would like to thank you, Notebook, for providing me with such a prestigious platform to share my views on the topic which is much sought after. Good evening to all the luminaries and all the attendees who have come from all the walks of society, different stratas of society, walks of life, to join this webinar. Before me, because maybe I'm the last but not the least speaker, Mr. Achin, Madam Sandhya Rao and Mr. Sanjay has given very valuable inputs on how to develop reading habits among children. So what I have taken from Mr. Achin is he deliberated on the literature masterpieces. I think thankful to him for sharing such titles. I think I'll also go through some of them which I have not read so far. Madam Sandhya Rao's the intake for me out of our conversation is that be a role model if you want to inculcate reading habits and enable children to read. That is very, very important aspect that she has deliberated upon. And Mr. Sanjay has also very effectively mentioned how his school also has been implementing implementing to develop reading habits among children through various ways and means. So Mr. Sanjay ended with a poem in Hindi. So I'm also inspired to start my conversation with a few lines, not full poem. This is by Gulzar Sahib. किताबें झांकती हैं बंद अलमारी के शीशों से, बड़ी हसरत से तकती हैं, महीनों अब मुलाकातें नहीं होती, जो शामें उनकी सोबत में कटा करती थीं, अब अक्सर गुजर जाती हैं कंप्यूटर के पर्दे पर. If I say this is the gist of the scenario of the young generation regarding their interest towards reading, so then I am not wrong. What happens? It's not the forcible reading that we have to make them read the text, underline it, answer the questions that I think we are discussing about. It's about developing the reading skills, reading habit also. Reading is one of the most fundamental skills children need to learn to be successful, because reading not only develops your language, your vocabulary, it increases the attention span and promotes stronger analytic thinking. So here I would also like to take a few points from Madam Sandhya's conversation. She said in the library, the books should be worn and torn. Yes, absolutely right. When as a CBSE member of CBSE inspection team, we go and visit different libraries in different CBSE schools, we find that library more functional and working, where we find actually the books are worn and torn. That means the students have been reading them out, they have been using them, and these are touched books. If we visit a library where the books are totally intact, properly stacked in the shelves or in the almirahs, then and moreover if the locks are put up there, so that means that library is not properly functional, because library is called the soul of any institution. So if we lock up the books, how can we expect that student will develop interest in reading the books? And I have certain points, because already much has been said. I'll try to be a little bit brief. For me, what has happened? So the digital devices, the digital, so especially if I say the mobile phone, the video games, they have literally swallowed the reading interest of children. I'm talking of the younger generation. I'm not talking of the generation of our age. Maybe we are still interested in reading books, and we still sleep down with a book on our chest. I think that scene is missing in our younger generation. So I have been experimenting with the students all these years. What we have done, as already discussed by all these luminaries, that yes, classroom library is one of the most effective concept in the schools. What we have done, we have developed a classroom library in every class, and the bookshelves are at their level. So any child can take out the book anytime, and what we have given a very liberal environment in the class. Here I would like to share, one day I was just on the round and the kindergarten teaching was over. And since we provide them with the books, all kinds of books they can take out anytime, and two children were waiting for the parents. And one child, 4-year-old, had taken out a book and reading out a story to a 3-year-old child. And that was really a treat for my eyes. Really, I really felt very overjoyed and very happy to see. Both of them could not read, but somehow, since the children were surrounded with the books and the teachers were reading aloud for them, and they developed that interest. Okay, there is something, there are certain characters, there's an elephant, there is some other animal or some other characters, the cartoon characters also, which is of their interest, and the child was reading out to the other one. I think that is an achievement that we can do. And classroom library concept, how to implement it effectively is, give them the liberty to pick up the book anytime. Because what happens, suppose maths class is going on, there are some children who do the sums before that, or any there is a smart class room is there, and the concept the teacher has already clarified, and now the children are just revising or waiting. In case the student wants to go to the corner, the reading corner, and pick up the book, it should be, and he or she should be encouraged to take that, because that is the environment that we have created in our school. Let children pick up the book, let them read it out, and then but the other beautiful thing that we have done is, it's not the books are got issued by the teacher from the concerned mother teacher or the subject teacher from the library. What we do is, we ask students to share, contribute one book of their choice, because that also develops the value of sharing. You bring one book and you have access to all other books. And other thing is, because when we want to develop the reading habits among children, there are two parallel bodies moving. It's not only the school who can do it, it's the parents also. They're also involved in developing the habit, because one thing very strongly conveyed by Madam Sandhya Rao, be a role model. Be a role model. If the teacher is also reading the book and encouraging the students to read books, if the parent is reading the book, and obviously, automatically, the children also develop the habit of reading. And we have also started with one concept, that is DEAR, that is drop everything and read, and that is more successful. I wanted to have it for the whole school, but I think that was not so successful. But it is very successful if we do it in our class, at our class level, in our classrooms. There the teacher can take the decision, okay, now, because I have seen sometimes what happens, okay, the work is done, we are waiting for the bell to go, or because they have to use that time constructively. And then this dear helps them. The teacher also reads, students also read, because there the silent reading, of course, is there, because whatever, because it's they have to develop the passion for reading. And there are certain triggering of ideas that's going on there when they read the books. And this is one aspect. And one thing more, like this is due to pandemic, the schools have been closed down, and we can give a bucket list to our children. That is, where would you like to read? Would you like to read in a park? Would you like to read with a friend? Of course, virtually. Would you like to read under a tree? Would you like to read in a hammock? Would you like to, because there are certain bucket lists we can give to them, so that they start reading the books. And of course, how many books will you read? There should be a target given to them. And the school can also provide them with a certificate of the reader of the month. This is what I was just discussing with my teachers. Okay, like, why not start with this reader of the month? Whosoever has read different books. And then we ask them not to write the review of the book, rather they can, this is open-ending stories. Okay, you have read the story, what other end could have been there for the story, because this is entirely other than the review of the book. And we somehow, interdisciplinary teaching we also take up. We ask them to design a cover for the book that you have read, because always the cover, the title page of the book is always very beautiful and attractive. So we assign this responsibility with the students to design the cover page of the book. And in case it's really good, of course, we will upload it on the Facebook page of the school. So this is not a competition. This is what you have done, and you are just displaying your, art. and your thought, because it's a combination of your art and your thought, so that they can do. So obviously then they are more attracted towards it. And another is, I have a wonderful idea that I was also sharing. Why not have reading party? We have pajama parties, we have all cocktail and mocktail parties. Why not reading party? Reading party, of course, virtual these days. So why not, if it is from the family side, so children can be encouraged, or a group of families can join together for a reading party where they can have fun. You can have your own food, of course. It's interactive on your video conferencing. You can raise a toast, or you can share your food virtually, and there should be dance and music, and there is a reading party. Which book are you reading? And then there can be discussion over the book that you have read exactly, because then others will come to know about some wonderful books that you have read. And there's, it will be a fun also. It's not a compulsion for children, like, because I have, because even in my points I had written, because usually we give book review to the children to write, because I took a point from Madam Sandhya, because she herself is a writer, and I have put a crossover book review with the all relevant questions and all that. But there can be some other, because other means to make children attract towards books. A 3-year-old, 2-year-old, they are attracted towards TV, towards mobile phone, because this is all colorful. There are pictures coming out of it. And how we can make it colorful or rather attractive for them is, because sometimes we do in the school, we make children enact the character. No, enactment is there. Okay, there's a lion. Okay, fine. So they act like lion, so that they relate with their comics and the characters of the book. So ultimately what happens, they they are attracted towards the books, and they start reading. Maybe they're not able to read because these are visual books. There are more pictures and less lines for them. Because yes, I'm also a firm believer that catch them young, because habits are developed at a young age. Because if we read for them as a parent, if we develop this habit of reading books and reading aloud for them, especially at the bedtime, if we do it at the bedtime story time must be there. If we develop that kind of habit, the children will, they will feel something is missing, like lullaby ki lori. If there's a lori or lullaby, it's some, if I have not read anything, something is missing. So that is kind of habit that will get developed. And habits die hard if we develop this kind of habit among our children. And one thing more that I have not done, but I was thinking of sharing it with the parents. Why not make a family point system? We shared before that the how to give points for the values, or for working or helping the mother at home, because during this pandemic. So why not make a reading develop this habit of reading through point based system? We can make a chart. The whole family can read. The father, if read, can give a star or point to himself, herself. Today, okay, I read something, and the mother has read something, and the child has read something. Because gradually it will develop. The children get engrossed in the books. And yes, I was just taking this word again, the hangover. They should have that hangover. Okay, because of not completing the book, I must complete it, because this is how we used to do. We used to have a novel, and no, I remember we used to complete it in one go, because that was the passion. If we are so passionate about reading, and if our children become so passionate about reading, I think the world will be a better place. Yes, I am not against digital reading platforms, but still nowadays already children are spending more time on the screens, and screen time has been enhanced, and the parents are also little bit concerned about it. So that what we want is they should have that feeling for the smell of new book. No, it should make them go crazy. And all the points that I also wanted to deliberate upon or discuss with you, they've already been discussed. Like, let them select the book, because this is what I have done with my daughters, because I let them go in the bookshop, or if it's in a mall or any other of exhibition, go and find out which book do you want to buy. And Mr. Achin said there in the Connaught Place, yes, I also bought so many books from Connaught Place, because when I tell my daughters, okay, I'm there and there are booksellers there, and that is really the beautiful thing that I find in Delhi. So then I come back with a bag full of books. They keep telling me, okay, the titles of the book, and I buy the book and come back, and then I have the feeling of satisfaction. Okay, I have bought the books which my daughters were looking for. And then when we develop this kind of habit among children, I think they become better human beings also, because it's we start from the fairy tales, the fiction, they come to the non-fiction. Some of that get interested in the science fiction as well. That development of your scientific temperament goes automatically. You don't have to have it, you don't have to force them to develop it, so it gets developed because when they start reading. And of course, and I personally recommend, I also personally suggest it to all the schools, that when it's these are the working hours, your libraries should the almirahs in the libraries must be open. Very rightly said, if children go there, okay, I find this book, this is of no use to me, why should the librarian give me this particular book? And they should have the access and freedom to reach out to any book, take it out, read it to the satisfaction. And that if only that will create a kind of environment where children are not forced to read, rather they become passionate about reading. So I'm not taking much of time. I would sum up by saying thank you to all of you, all the team members of Notebook, for providing me this platform to share my views with such learned people. And I think it was a great learning experience for me as well. And I'll definitely try to implement some of the points because I have picked them up and try to implement them in my life. In my school also, we will be able to guide our parents about developing the reading habit among children. I think I am going back enriched. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. It's been an absolute privilege. Always the best part about this platform, Together for Education, is having people connect. Like you said, you're taking back tips and points you got from Ms. Rao and Mr. Dewangan. I'm sure they are also taking home points that you would have mentioned. And this is exactly what our vision was behind creating the Together for Education webinar series. Thank you. Thank you so much. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we are at the end of our speaking sessions. Unfortunately, due to paucity of time, we will not be able to take questions. I have seen that Sandhya ma'am and others have already answered some questions online. If there are other questions that are specifically meant for a particular speaker, we will take those questions and send them over email so that the speakers can then respond to them individually. With that, I will now call upon Auchin to give the vote of thanks. It's been an amazing session. So Auchin, over to you to wrap it up.
Yeah, I think great session we had. And I'm sure that the audience today also goes back enriched with a lot of good takeaways. In fact, that is the spirit of the evening. Ms. Sandhya Rao, I think really liked each aspect that you brought forward. Very touching to know about your mother and how she read Michelle Obama's Becoming. And I think a few points that you mentioned made a lot of sense and very practical insights. Letting our children play with books, reading out to them, and feeling an affection are all that matters. Completely agree with you. Couldn't agree more. And I think starting early, making books accessible to children is most important. And thanks for mentioning book fair. That's an all-time favorite. And as you mentioned about Pratham, I think, yes, they've done some great work. In fact, we work very closely with them. Prem, the CEO of Pratham, has been a speaker in this forum. Making books attractive is important, definitely. And I think the last part, the last thing that you said, is something that you'll always remember. That 9-year-old saying that every time she reads a book, she learns something new. I think that statement speaks volumes about the culture of reading that we are trying to promote. Mr. Sanjay Dewangan, first of all, uh, thank you for being with us again. I really liked your practical perspective and the way you highlighted the real life challenges. And generating interest and motivating them, of course, is most important. Very practical tip that you gave and which I take away is taking a leap from familiarity. I think that's a very intelligent and useful solution. That when we offer a book to a child, it's very important that we start from a point where something is familiar to him or her so that it strikes an instant chord. And storytelling, yes, that's exactly the approach that we at Notebook also believe in. In fact, the entire platform has been built on that concept. Content needs to be engaging, whether that be print or digital. And I think you very rightly mentioned that it's difficult to be a good storyteller unless we have gone the full circle. I think that's very important. Another very interesting point that you made uh, with regard to regional language is very important. We live in a country which has great depth in terms of literature and culture. We are very fortunate that ways. We live in the land of Tagore and Munshi Premchand and so many other luminaries. So undoubtedly, we have a lot of source of inspiration closer home as well. In fact, coming to the new education policy, definitely we would love to have a separate session on that. But since you mentioned, we at Notebook have been working in this direction for more than a year now. And if you look at our content for state boards for UP and West Bengal, we already worked on bilingual content. We always believed that it's very important that a student should first be comfortable and familiar. So using mother tongue to help a student grasp the concept, I guess, is very important. Language at the end of the day is just a medium. What matters is the concept. What matters is the understanding. Language cannot be a turn off. It cannot act as a fear factor. And that's something that we at Notebook completely believe in. Ms. Madhu Sharma, I think really you made some really good and interesting points. Library is the soul of any institution, of course, 100%. Classroom library is something that I'm sure really helps. And I really like that part when you mentioned about Reader of the Month. I think that's a great suggestion. That will really go miles in motivating young children to read. And catching them young is, of course, very well summed up. And I think last part that you mentioned, going back enriched. Not only you, ma'am, all of us today go back enriched. And that's the spirit of the evening, ladies and gentlemen. And I also thank the audience for being with us here in this wonderful session and for supporting our endeavor in each and every session. We at Notebook are indeed humbled. We look forward to see you in our next session. Thank you, take care and goodbye.
Thank you, Achinji. Thank you very much.
Thank you.